The night my husband tried to divorce me in front of all his friends, I already had proof he'd been sleeping with two of their wives. He thought I was about to be humiliated. What he didn't know was that the divorce papers had already been filed, his hotel records were being preserved, and by sunrise, the people laughing behind him would be opening evidence packets with their names on them. My name is Andrea Rhodes. I'm 33 years old, and I work as an operations supervisor for a freight railroad. 3 months earlier, I still thought I had a good marriage. Dylan and I had been together for nearly 8 years. Nothing glamorous, nothing dramatic. Just solid. We had a house, 2 cars, decent savings, Friday night dates, Sunday mornings at the farmer's market, and an upstairs bedroom we jokingly called the future nursery. Then Dylan got promoted at Summit Financial. Director of Client Relations. More money, more responsibility, more late nights. And suddenly, a life that seemed to have less and less room for me. At first, I was proud of him. The networking dinners made sense. So did the business trips, expensive new wardrobe, and gym membership. What didn't make sense was everything else. His phone started living face down. He changed the passcode twice in 1 month. Receipts appeared that didn't match where he claimed he'd been. Sometimes Dylan would leave home wearing one cologne and come back smelling like hotel soap. His social life changed too. There was Beckett, obsessed with his BMW and constantly bragging about his easy pass. Trent owned part of a car dealership and could turn any conversation into a story about whatever he'd sold that week. Their wives, Kirsten and Ashley, had become especially close to Dylan. Then there was Waverly, who seemed incapable of experiencing anything without wondering whether it could become content for her lifestyle blog. We were all supposedly friends. Cookouts, holiday parties, couples dinners. Looking back, I think that's what made the truth harder to see. These weren't strangers. They were people who had eaten at my table. The moment everything changed came on a Tuesday night in February. Dylan told me he was going to Beckett's place to help him with some work. "I'll probably be home around 10, he said, kissing my cheek. I happened to finish a late shift early. My route home took me close to Beckett's neighborhood. I don't know why I turned. Instinct, maybe. His house was dark. Completely dark. No BMW. No cars at all. I sat across the street with my engine running for nearly 5 minutes, inventing explanations because the alternative hurt too much. Maybe they'd gone somewhere. Maybe plans changed. Maybe Dylan forgot to tell me. Then I opened our joint credit card app. A new charge had appeared 40 minutes earlier. Marriott downtown. 247. I stared at it until the numbers stopped looking real. That was the moment I stopped being Dylan's trusting wife. But I didn't confront him. At 11 that night, he walked through our front door. "Sorry," he said casually. Beckett wouldn't stop talking. I looked at his hair, slightly different from when he'd left. Then I smelled the hotel soap. "Sounds like Beckett," I said. Dylan smiled. He actually smiled. And I understood something important. If I confronted him then, he'd lie. So I decided to find out how big the lie was first. Over the next 6 weeks, I documented everything. We had shared accounts, shared credit cards, and one stupid technological mistake Dylan had forgotten about. An old iPad still connected to our family cloud account. His messages were syncing. So were his photographs. Once I realized that, the truth stopped arriving in pieces. It arrived in waves, hotel charges, restaurant bills that didn't match his stories, 2 entrees when he claimed he'd eaten alone. Then came the messages, heart emojis, plans to meet at the usual place. Messages about missing someone's touch. I remember sitting at the kitchen table reading them while Dylan showered upstairs. My hands weren't shaking anymore. That scared me more than the messages. Then I found the photographs. Dylan with Kirsten in the Marriott parking garage. Timestamp: Tuesday, 8:47 p.m. Beckett's BMW keychain was visible in Kirsten's hand. That same night, Beckett had posted about spending a quiet evening at home with his wife. Another photo showed Dylan with Ashley outside a motel off Route 9, room 114 visible behind them, her arm around his waist, his head tilted toward hers. like they were on vacation instead of betraying 2 marriages. There were other women too. One coffee shop selfie. One video call screenshot with someone I didn't recognize. That was enough. My husband wasn't having an affair. He was maintaining a collection, and 2 women I considered friends were part of it. I called Nico, a friend who worked in IT. I need to know if this can survive someone calling it fake. He cross-referenced the timestamps, transactions, and location data. The photographs were legitimate. Then he noticed several hotel dates overlapping with transactions that looked connected to Dylan's work expenses. There were other irregularities too, messages involving Ashley and dealership customer information, along with unexplained gaps in Kirsten's work schedule. Nico didn't pretend to know what any of it meant legally. "You need to show this part to your attorney," he said. So I did. What started as cheating was beginning to look like something that could bleed into careers. Even my 73-year-old neighbor had noticed something. She handed me a notebook containing dates, times, and descriptions of cars arriving while I worked. Beckett's BMW, Trent's truck. "I didn't want to interfere," she said. But something didn't look right. I took everything to my attorney. She studied the evidence, then looked up. "This is remarkably thorough." I had motivation. She tapped the financial records. "The marital spending matters. And if those company expenses are what they appear to be, Dylan has a much larger problem. I want to do something before we file." Her eyebrow lifted. "I want to give them a chance to lie." That got her attention. We sent carefully worded preservation notices referencing specific dates and hotels without revealing everything. The idea was simple. Tell the truth, or lie in writing. They chose the second option. Kirsten denied ever staying at the Marriott. Ashley insisted she'd never been involved in anything inappropriate. And because Dylan's messages were still syncing to the kitchen iPad, I watched them reassure each other afterward. "Someone's making things up." They had no idea it was me. That afternoon, I signed the divorce petition. My attorney sought temporary protections over our joint accounts because of the documented spending. Dylan still knew nothing. He came home every evening believing I was the same woman he'd been deceiving for months. Meanwhile, I built the evidence packets. Not gossip. Documents. Beckett would receive what connected Kirsten to Dylan. Trent would receive what concerned Ashley. Anything involving legitimate professional issues would go through the appropriate channels. Then, 2 nights later, I heard Dylan talking quietly on the phone upstairs. I wasn't supposed to hear him, but I heard enough. "Thursday," he whispered. A pause. Then a laugh. "Yeah, we'll all be there." Another pause. "No, she won't see it coming." I stood at the bottom of the stairs listening. Apparently, Dylan had decided he wanted a divorce too. Except he didn't want to tell me privately. He wanted his friends there. Waverly would probably record it. They wanted to watch my reaction. They thought they were planning an execution. What Dylan didn't know was that his divorce petition was already sitting at the courthouse. And while he was preparing to embarrass me in front of his friends, I was preparing to tell 2 of those friends exactly what their wives had been doing with my husband. Thursday night, my phone lit up. FaceTime. Dylan. I stared at his name for 3 seconds. Then I answered. His smiling face appeared on the screen. Behind him, I could already hear everyone laughing. And that was when I knew the show was about to begin. Dylan's face filled my screen. Behind him was the private lounge his friends loved downtown. Low lighting, expensive drinks. Everyone packed around the same table like they'd gathered for a celebration. Maybe they had. Kirsten leaned into frame first. "Andrea." Finally. She was smiling. That bothered me more than anything. Because I'd seen photographs of that same woman with my husband in a Marriott parking garage. "Having fun?" I asked. "Oh, we're having an amazing time." Ashley appeared beside her. Then Waverly pushed into view with another phone in her hand. "Recording." "Of course." Dylan looked directly into the camera. "Andrea, we've been talking." "We?" "The group." I almost laughed. "And we've reached a decision." Kirsten covered her smile with her glass. Dylan paused dramatically. "It's time for us to get divorced." Nobody spoke. They were waiting. For tears. Anger. Maybe begging. I let 10 seconds pass. Then I smiled. Funny you should mention that. Dylan's expression changed. The papers are already filed. His smile disappeared. What? My attorney filed the divorce petition. We're already addressing temporary protections over the accounts because of the money you've been spending. The room went quiet. You're lying. I'm not. Waverly slowly lowered the phone she'd been recording with. I wasn't finished. There's something else everyone should probably hear. Dylan looked at me. Andrea, don't. That was the first moment I knew he suspected what was coming. I leaned closer to the screen. Beckett, when was the last time you checked Kirsten's Easy Pass history? Kirsten froze. Beckett's voice came from somewhere behind the camera. What? 8 Tuesday night trips connected to the Marriott route over the last 2 months. Several match nights Kirsten told you she was somewhere else. Kirsten's face drained. Then I looked at Ashley. Trent, you might also want to ask Ashley why she was outside the Route 9 motel with my husband. Trent appeared in frame. What the hell are you talking about? I have a photograph. Room 114 behind them. Ashley's arm around Dylan's waist. Dylan stood abruptly. Andrea, stop. No. I held the phone steady. You wanted an audience. Now you have one. Ashley shook her head. She's making this up. You'll get the evidence tomorrow morning. Kirsten finally found her voice. This is insane. You already denied being at the Marriott in writing, Kirsten. She stopped. I watched recognition hit her. The hotel records are being preserved. Your denial has a timestamp. So does the evidence. Beckett turned toward her. What letter? She didn't answer. Ashley muttered, I've never been to that motel. I smiled. It means keep saying it. Silence. Dylan finally understood. This wasn't an argument he could win by getting louder. I had already built the record. And Dylan? His eyes met mine. Some of your hotel dates appear to overlap with expenses submitted through Summit Financial. His face changed instantly. That one scared him. That's bullshit. Maybe. Summit can determine that. Andrea, don't do anything stupid. I laughed once. You invited your friends to watch you divorce me on FaceTime and you're giving me advice about judgment? Nobody laughed anymore. I told them what would happen next. Beckett and Trent would receive evidence concerning their wives. Anything involving legitimate professional issues would go through appropriate channels. And Dylan's questionable expenses were documented. Waverly finally spoke. You're doing this because you're bitter. No, Waverly. Bitter would be posting everything online. I looked at the second phone still in her hand. That's your department. She lowered it. I'm using paperwork. Dylan shook his head. 8 years, Andrea. Interesting. 8 years hadn't mattered in those hotel rooms. Now they mattered. You made this public, I said. You brought your friends into our marriage because you wanted to watch me break. I paused. So now they get the context. Andrea, wait. No, you don't get to wait me anymore. I ended the call. The next morning, the packets went out. I didn't post anything. Didn't call mutual friends. Didn't write some dramatic social media expose. Beckett received the evidence involving Kirsten. Trent received what concerned Ashley. My attorney handled anything that belonged in professional or legal channels. Then I went to work. Friday night, my doorbell rang around 9. Dylan stood on the porch. Waverly was behind him. He looked like he hadn't slept. We need to talk, Dylan said. No. Andrea, please. 5 minutes. Waverly stepped forward. He's still your husband. You were recording him divorcing me last night. She looked away. Dylan swallowed. I made mistakes. We could go to counseling. I was unhappy. Then you should have left. Andrea. The packets are already out. His head snapped up. What? Beckett knows. Trent knows. The rest goes where it legitimately needs to go. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to make our divorce entertainment. Neither of them had an answer. I closed the door. The next morning, Beckett called. The toll records matched. His voice sounded hollow. I checked them myself. Kirsten admitted enough. A long silence followed. I don't think there's a marriage left after this. I'm sorry. So am I. He hung up. Trent called later. I found another phone in Ashley's car. My stomach tightened. There are other messages, and one contact looks like a dealership customer. Give it to your attorney and business partner. I already called Weston. He went quiet. I'm sorry about Thursday, Andrea. I thought Dylan humiliating you was funny. Yeah. I should have asked questions. Yeah, you should have. I'm sorry. This time, I believed him. It didn't change anything. After that, the consequences started moving without me. Trent's business partners reviewed the customer information issue. Questions surfaced about Kirsten's own records. Dylan and his friends tried calling me bitter, unstable, vindictive. Apparently, I'd fabricated everything because I couldn't accept that Dylan wanted to leave. But accusations worked better before other people started checking the records themselves. Then Dylan's world finally caught up with him. I got a call one afternoon. Summit Financial had begun reviewing his expense reports. That surprised me. I hadn't sent them anything myself. Apparently, I didn't need to. Once enough people started asking questions, the right question eventually reached the right desk. 2 days later, Dylan was placed on administrative leave. That evening, I sat alone in the house that used to feel too quiet without him. His coffee mug was still in the cabinet. His jacket was still hanging near the back door. 8 years didn't disappear just because the truth arrived. For months, I'd imagined the moment Dylan finally understood what he'd destroyed. I thought it would feel like victory. It didn't. It just felt quiet. But something inside me had changed. I no longer needed Dylan to admit what he'd done. I didn't need an apology. And I didn't need to watch him fall apart to know I'd made the right decision. The paperwork was moving. The investigation was moving. And so was I. For the first time in 8 years, whatever happened next in Dylan's life didn't have to become part of mine. Dylan's administrative leave lasted 12 days. Then Summit Financial fired him. The official reason wasn't infidelity. Companies don't care who you sleep with until you start making it their problem. They cared about expense reports. Hotel stays categorized as business travel. Dinners listed as client meetings that matched nights he'd spent with Kirsten or Ashley. Reimbursements he couldn't explain once someone started comparing dates. My attorney called me that afternoon. Summit completed their review. And Dylan's employment was terminated. I waited for satisfaction. Nothing came. What about the divorce? His attorney contacted me this morning. He wants to negotiate. That made sense. Once Dylan lost his salary, dragging out an expensive divorce became considerably less attractive. The divorce itself moved slower than the chaos around it. There were preliminary hearings, financial disclosures, account statements, and weeks of attorneys exchanging documents. The house wasn't magically handed to me. Dylan wasn't stripped of everything. Real life was less cinematic than that. But the affair-related spending mattered. Hotels, restaurants, trips, charges from our joint accounts that had nothing to do with our marriage and everything to do with betraying it. My attorney pushed to have those expenses considered when the finances were divided. Meanwhile, the friend group that had gathered to watch Dylan humiliate me simply stopped existing. Beckett separated from Kirsten. Trent and his business partner had attorneys review whether Ashley had improperly used dealership customer information. Kirsten's own work discrepancies triggered an internal review, and she eventually resigned. Waverly stopped posting about me. For someone who had been ready to turn my divorce into content, she became remarkably interested in privacy once the story stopped flattering her friends. I didn't contact any of them. There was nothing left to say. About 6 weeks after Dylan lost his job, I walked out after my shift and saw him standing beside my car. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight. The expensive jacket was gone. So was the polished corporate look he'd spent the last year building. He looked tired, not ruined, not homeless. Just like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. I signed everything, he said. I stopped several feet away. What are you doing here? I wanted to tell you myself. I'm not contesting the financial settlement anymore. I unlocked my car. Okay. That's it? What were you expecting? He gave a small, broken laugh. I don't know. I opened the driver's door. Andrea, please. 5 minutes. I almost got in. Then I stopped. Maybe some part of me wanted to hear what 8 years sounded like when there were finally no lies left to protect. 5. Dylan nodded. I lost my job. I heard. He looked down. At first, I blamed you for everything. Convenient. Yeah. His eyes were red. I'm sorry. There it was. The sentence I'd imagined hearing months earlier. It felt strangely small now. For what? He stared at me. Everything. No. Be specific. His jaw tightened. Then he nodded. For cheating. Kirsten. Ashley. The others. For spending our money. For lying to your face every night. He paused. And Thursday. The FaceTime? He nodded. I wanted you to break. That was the first thing he said that actually hurt. Not because I hadn't known, because hearing him admit it made the cruelty impossible to soften. Why? He looked away. Because if you broke down, I could tell myself you were weak, possessive, that leaving you was something I had to do. So you needed me to become the villain. I think so. You invited people to watch. I know. Waverly was recording. He lowered his head. I stared at him. You weren't just leaving me, Dylan. You were trying to humiliate me enough to make yourself feel innocent. His eyes filled. I know that now. I almost laughed. That's convenient, too. I deserve that. No. He looked confused. This isn't about what you deserve anymore. That silenced him. After a moment, he whispered, I've lost everyone. I shrugged. Those sound like consequences. I have nothing. That irritated me. You have your health. You have your education. You can find another job. You know what I mean. Unfortunately, I did. He meant me. The house. His career. The life he'd assumed would survive everything untouched. You took everything from me, he whispered. I stared at him. No, Dylan. His face tightened. You did that yourself. I stepped closer. I just stopped protecting you from people finding out. Tears slipped down his face. Then he reached for the last thing he had. 8 years, Andrea. There it was again. 8 years. Once those words would have stopped me. Now they sounded different. 8 years have to mean something, he said. They do. Hope flickered across his face. I watched it happen. Then I finished. They mean I know exactly what I'm walking away from. His expression collapsed. There's really nothing left? I thought about Friday date nights, farmers markets, coffee in bed, the future nursery. There had been real things between us. That was what made betrayal hurt. You can't destroy something that never existed. I don't hate you, I said. He looked surprised. I thought I would. For a while, I probably did. Then maybe. No. One word. That was enough. Hate takes energy, and I don't want to spend any more energy on you. He flinched. Andrea. We're done. He reached toward my arm, then stopped himself. I did love you. Maybe he did. Maybe that was the saddest part. Then you should have treated me like someone you loved. He had no answer. I got into my car. Dylan remained standing beside it. Before I closed the door, he spoke one last time. I'm sorry. I looked at him. I believe you. His face changed. Maybe he'd expected forgiveness to follow. It didn't. Being sorry doesn't put us back together. I closed the door, started the engine, put the car in reverse. Dylan stepped away. For months, I'd imagined leaving him would feel triumphant, like winning. It didn't. It felt lighter than that. I drove out of the parking lot without checking the rearview mirror. 8 years earlier, I'd built a life around Dylan Rhodes. Now, I was 33 years old, driving home to a quiet house and a future I hadn't planned. And for once, that didn't scare me. Because the worst thing Dylan had done wasn't choosing other women. It was convincing himself that betraying me meant I would become smaller. He was wrong. The marriage ended. I didn't.